the service plan for 24 months. That's what it comes to for that many devices. So based on those numbers, what the IT department would recommend is moving forward with an agreement with Verizon. It's not an actual contract because we're on a month-to-month basis still. We could add or remove devices as needed on a month-to-month basis, so we're not locked into any type of long-term agreement. One of the things we did to try and keep costs as low as possible, and 2 of the 4 vendors got creative with their pricing. We looked at because of course data usage is what costs most on cell plans. So we looked at the previous 12 months of data that we currently have, which right now T-Mobile is our current provider. We looked at our highest month of data usage, which happened to be 9.97 gigabytes, if that means anything to anyone. So we went back to the vendors and said, can you get creative with pricing, and let's do a shared data plan instead of unlimited data plan. And so Verizon, for instance, the agreement we would be going into would be based on a 25 gigabyte shared data plan per month, which is 2.5 times the highest data that we've consumed in the last 12 months. So I feel pretty comfortable with that amount. Another thing Verizon did that was unique to the other providers, they've agreed to give us a $200 one-time credit per phone number that we poured over from a different provider. That really is what made them the cheapest, because it worked out to about a $3,800 one-time credit. And this would give all city staff an iPhone 8 64 gig. And after 2 years, if we decide we wanted new phones, we could get new phones at no cost again 24 months from now and keep the same plan. One other, I guess, conversation I've had on some level with BOLA, Karen, and actually all the non-public safety departments during budget planning this year was the concept of offering a stipend possibly, instead of providing a device to these 19 individuals and paying for a service plan. If I give you so many dollars per month, do you agree to use that in lieu of getting the device in the service plan? I know during budget planning I had at least one department who was interested. It was the Public Works Department. They had voiced, but I believe Karen brought it up at an executive team meeting and didn't get much feedback on it. With that being said, I kind of figured the break-even point based on this Verizon contract, it would be $30 per device. And I guess I don't see the harm in offering a $30 per device stipend, since it would cost the city no money to do that, and some employees might see it as a benefit to not have to carry 2 devices and to carry 1 device instead. So my recommendation would be to offer a $30 a month stipend in lieu of a cell phone for any position that the city has deemed necessary to have a cell phone as well. And that's it.
You indicated where the $30 was coming from, if we had to pay it. Do you want to cover that?
So yeah, if we have to pay it, I guess I don't totally understand the back-end financials piece of it, but basically we wouldn't provide them a cell phone device or that monthly service plan, and that's where the $30 comes from. That's what we're going to pay regardless to give them a cell phone. So it would just be the stipend instead of providing them that device and the plan.
Questions?
I just comment. I think it would be an advantage to people to use their own personal phone, because everybody's juggling 2 phones.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems, if people are amenable to that, that it would be a worthwhile thing to have done. So I would be in favor of that if they are.
Alderwoman Tice?
So I have a question about that. If someone is using their personal phone, do we have policies about searching the phone? Like, I should know this, but I don't yet know this. Like, is there anything we'd ever want to search, or if somebody posted something that was contrary to any policies we have and it's a personal owned device?
So that's a different issue.
It's a different issue, but
it's a different issue.
It's a totally different issue. Do we have that kind of policy?
We have a policy
and what would
that regulates, so to speak, what you can post on social media, about city-related, work, your personal social media, if we see it. And there have been issues in the past, and so that becomes a personnel matter, and we deal with that accordingly. But that's different from the ability, either through Sunshine, to request related matters. So what you're doing is you're agreeing to make it available.
So I would think that employees would need to understand that.
We would have a policy, a disclosure form or a form created by the city attorney, so that when they agree to the stipend, they're signing off on that as well. And we would make that very clear.
Yeah,
That's best practices anywhere.
Yeah, but that's
It's not a personal cell phone anymore. If it comes to public, what if it gets subpoenaed?
right. It would become a public
Yeah,
cell phone.
that's-
It's not your own cell phone. So people should really understand that it's not just a $30 bonus a month. It's
And they would understand that because Larry apparently has experience with that because they
Yeah, in the
they
city
do
of
that.
Clayton, we used to offer 30. We increased it this year. It's actually costing the city a little bit to offer that convenience to their employees. And the employees in Clayton are across the board. Some are so anti-doing it because of exactly what you're bringing up, where others, I guess, feel they have nothing to hide and they sign off on the policy. And to them, the convenience of being able to have one device, they're good with accepting that. And we're not forcing this on anybody. It would just be an offer if someone wanted to take up the offer.
So would they have, you could have a phone or a stipend up to you? Is that what or is it that it would just be a stipend?
Either or.
Okay.
Yeah, either or.
Do you, I know personally, the idea that my phone would be the subject of a sunshine law, if the answer's not no, it's
Yep.
It's a bad no.
bold, capital, underlined, and circled no. And I would just think from my concern is with the stipend, and yes, I appreciate, because I have in former employers, they gave me a phone and they took it back when I left. That there's a sunshine law request. A disgruntled employee is separated from employment, taking their phone with them, and now I need those text messages, and all of a sudden, and they're like, no, I'm not going to accommodate you, and so now I need to get a subpoena and bring them into court. I mean, to me, it seems cleaner that this is my phone, this is your work phone, you use it for work, and then you give it back when you leave, or you give it to me when I ask you, because you have no expectation of privacy on this phone.
That's correct. The biggest issue I've seen in my experience with it is they take their cell phone with them, their cell phone number with them when they leave. So people that are used to calling that cell phone number are going to continue to call that. I did it when I left my previous employer. I get calls periodically, and I have to let them know I no longer work there. That is the one side effect that I've
And
seen
that's
with
something
it.
I didn't even, that's
Yeah.
another.
But we
grand
do that
deal.
here anyway. If we have had employees that have been here 30 years, that have had a cell number. So when they leave, they want to take that number with them, and the city has allowed them to do that. So we deal with that anyway.
So, I'm not dying on this hill. That would just be, I think it makes sense that we have a method of communication, for these non-emergency employees. I personally am for, that they have to have a city-issued cell phone, but I certainly would recommend passing that on for more voices to weigh in. Maybe
So we would need a recommendation from here to go to the board.
What's that?
We would need a recommendation from Ways and Means to go to the board, knowing fully well that the city attorney would help us write, an acknowledgement disclosure form for those employees who choose to keep their own phone and get the stipend. So it would be an education process. It wouldn't just be, here's the $30, be on your way. There is a process to this.
I guess my other thought on that is your example of having to get a subpoena to get whatever data because the employee's not here, or maybe they are here and don't want to give up their phone. Like AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, we don't have access to those text messages or other than the phone
And
number.
texts are golden.
Yeah,
People
it takes
think
a
that their
subpoena.
texts are
It
never
takes a
gonna get
subpoena for
discovered.
me to get that information from the provider, regardless, even if it's a city-owned device. AT&T just doesn't give up that information without some type of court order. Because I have no way to see it other than the phone number.
On the current city cell phones, let's just say someone lost one, don't you guys have a way to like wipe it or something right
Yeah,
away?
we put a mobile device management client on it, and if a device is lost, I can issue a wipe command, which would basically reset the phone like it was brand new, back
Can
to
you
nothing.
do that on a stipend phone?
You can. There's the biggest topic of conversation that I've had in 2 other cities, and they went differently on it. But the person would have to agree to allow me to install that piece of software on their phone to do that. We can do it where I only wipe the city email. It wouldn't even be the rest of the device. But for instance, Clayton doesn't require that.
Does or doesn't?
Does not. Nope.
I hadn't thought about
I
that
just
either.
I
had
hadn't
one
thought
other-
about that either, yeah, that's a whole
I just had
different-
one
so-
other question. So, okay, so I guess I don't care, the stipend or this. What I do care about is either or.
Yep.
Because you already know what has happened when we try to switch over with some of the police and fire's contracts over to you, who's paid for it, who's not paid for it. It's been sitting there not paid because someone else is paid. I'm afraid this is going to happen when we've got stipend, some people getting stipend, and then some is getting billed on Verizon. And then if someone leaves, make sure the stipend stops, and a new person comes in and takes a job, well, I want a cell phone. Then we're right back to, would we buy them a cell phone?
That's
offer
what
them-
we do in other
Okay.
cities. Yes.
All right.
Yep.
I guess that was just my concern, is like, for finance, it would be a lot easier for tracking to be, or if I knew that it was all Verizon, I know Larry's responsible
Yep.
for that bill. If it's all stipend, it's probably gonna come between me and Jason and HR to make sure.
It's usually an
they're
email
paid.
from a department director to HR to
Right.
say I approve a stipend
Right,
for this
and then we have
person.
to figure out how to make sure we get the money out of another, however we're gonna pay for it. But then doing it 2 separate ways is where it could get a little muddy, is all I was
But
thinking of.
every city has a policy or a process in which to process those who are leaving. So we do have a list of everything that the city has made available to that individual, and there is always an exit interview. So during that exit interview is when you take all those things back. So there is a process in place if it is followed.
I suppose, like, if I'm summarily fired because of the inappropriate text messages I sent on my
I
phone,
love it. Go on.
to which I do not, and you're like, oh, I want your exit interview. I'm like, sorry, and I'm taking my phone and my other things, and I'm never coming back until,
So usually there's a strategy to do that.
so, I mean,
there's a way to get all that information if you're seasoned enough at your job to know how to do it.
is there, so is this something that goes to the
Yeah.
main board? I mean,
Yeah.
so I support the action. I'm for the cell phones, but I certainly, that the city issues cell phones and there not be a stipend. But,
Right.
Certainly the majority carries the day. But I wouldn't
But
want
it's
to
the
have my
decision
opinion
from here.
not move it along to the next stage. So others
It
can
should
have
be
that
the
opinion.
decision from here so that we're
Okay.
not having that conversation again at the board level. So whatever you all are comfortable with based on what he has recommended.
So, may I ask, do we currently, right now, do we only have city-issued cell phones?
Yes.
Yes.
And there is interest in this from employees, or no, I mean, how do we, are you just
There was
seeing
at least
interest in
one
other
department,
cities?
well, other cities offer it and do it, but there was one department, I don't know if Dan remembers, it was during the Public Works budget planning with IT and Public Works that Dan and I believe Kyle even asked about the possibility of doing it. And that's really what got the thought process going in my head, knowing that this project was this year.
Got crickets. I asked the management team, I think Eric might have spoke up a little bit, but it was a little bit different subject. But I didn't hear anything else, and it's what Bola said, we should.
I
ask the
wanted to give
management
people
team.
an opportunity.
Right.
If this committee were to approve of it, I mean, there's certain things where I think at a executive level I can make decisions on and be fine with it. But since we're hearing interest, I wanted to give people an opportunity. That's why I encouraged Larry in our discussions to present it as part of this presentation.
Does every member of every employee get one?
No.
No, there's 19, besides public safety departments, there's 19 citywide only.
So we're not talking about the person who has the snowplow having a cell phone.
Maybe the crew leader.
Yeah, I have a list of them.
The
I don't
crew
truthfully, I
leader
don't
would
know
have
the
it. All
positions.
department, not all department directors who I would tend to need a contact after hours for emergency matters have it. And then there are key supervisory positions in public works and parks that have it. That's pretty much it.
So as I read this, there's an ethical posture and there is a financial posture in terms of keeping everything straight. Is one of those overridingly important?
I don't know that there's an ethical. I'm
Well,
not
in
sure what
terms
you
of
mean by
whether
ethical.
you want it on your personal phone or not. That one. Maybe that's not the right word
Okay.
for it.
Yeah.
So is one of those more important than the other? That was,
Yeah, that's it depends on the individual. I mean, I carry 3 phones. So, when I'm out of the country, I have another phone. So
are
you
we, do we have sort of 3 scenarios? 1, city issued phones, 2, all to stipend, and then 3, make your choice? Or what are we being?
It's 1 city phones,
Okay,
or for those who want a stipend, give them a stipend rather than a city phone. So it's
I
going to
don't
be
think you
their
could
choice.
force it.
And,
You couldn't force
You couldn't
everyone
force it.
to take a
It's
stipend.
whoever
No.
wants it. And I don't
Yeah.
get the sense that we're going to have a lot of people take it up.
might
It
not.
might be 3 or 4. But if you all don't support that, then you should say just city phones.
and I'm trying to think how best to, do we need a majority of a quorum or a majority of the committee?
The majority of the quorum.
So how best do you think that's just I mean, I have an
So,
opinion, I'm just.
Yeah, a motion,
Come on.
either.
a
You know,
motion,
do a motion to-
second, or lack of a second.
For one, I mean, not the other, so we
Um,
choose one, that's all.
Yeah.
Are those 2 different?
Yeah, I think it's
So I
just
guess,
the 2.
we'll start with straight up cell phones and see where we land. And then,
Yes.
and then we'll go
Perfect.
to the other option and see where we land. And then I think we'll have a decision.
Okay.
and if we abstain, because we can see both sides of the issue and don't we have.
Well,
An abstention,
no,
I think
so
would
I
be a
got a
no.
legal opinion on that yesterday, that abstain really means a no vote. So I need to confirm that with Kevin, but yesterday I got an opinion that abstention means a no vote.
May I ask one more question before we frame the motion? So these other cities who have done this, did they wrestle with these legal questions and they clearly came out that the $30 stipend or whatever amount of stipend was okay?
Yep.
Did they wrestle with these same discussions?
Yeah, they did. They come to different conclusions. To me, it's really a convenience that you're offering. You're not forcing it. That's why I don't even personally have a strong opinion, because if you don't want it, that's fine too. Here's your city-provided device. But like I said, the biggest one is probably the mobile device management, because I would actually have to install a piece of software on that phone. And Clayton in particular decided not to force that, and what that means is if that phone's lost, I don't have the capability to wipe the city data off that device, which is just going to be email.
Okay, may I make a motion? Well, or what motion?
What is, if we started with the cell phone motion and see, does that work?
Sure.
And then if it fails, then we go to the other, or what do you want? I mean, I'm kind
Let's just make one motion and see where that takes us.
of.
Right, here's the motion I'm gonna make. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve this new cell phone policy with Verizon and include a stipend for employees who don't want the city phone of $30 a month, but those employees are required to have a
Mobile
mobile
device management.
device
Yeah.
put on the phone so that the IT department can wipe clean the city information if lost.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, roll call.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderwoman Parker Tice,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
I'll say no. But we win, so we're done with that. We move on. It's okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is there I think it was Keith going to go
Yes.
before so I don't,
Yes.
that's not exactly on the agenda, but
So
or
then
comprehensive, is it?
it's on there, but it's further down.
Okay, so I guess we'll just, so we don't have
Compre-
any more under the city administrator's report, is
That's
that correct?
it.
Okay, so item number 7, department report, comprehensive, the CAFR discussion. I guess that would be, we could
City treasurer.
recognize our city treasurer.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the request of the city, I reached out to all the parties involved with the current year audit and the bonding company to see what type of requirements we have moving forward with the audit. I spoke with the auditing firm, I spoke with the accounting firm, spoke with bond counsel, spoke with underwriter, and I spoke with city staff concerning this to try to figure out the best solutions moving forward to help the city not run into the same issues of having the audit be late and make sure that, just moving forward we're in a better position. So some of the initial recommendations that I've come up with would be to perform duties that can be performed early, start those in January. Stuff like fixed assets, the fixed asset work can be started in January. Requesting valuations from third parties can be done in January. These can be done outside of the auditing firm. We send out our fixed asset list to all our departments asking them to update these lists. When we wait till May, we end up waiting another month for the department heads to go through the fixed asset list. So I'm recommending that in January we update the list to the best of our ability for assets that we have. We then send those lists off to departments to review the list to make sure everything's there. That's a timely process that can be done in January that will help expedite things. Also recommend we have a new software, and from talking to Karen, the software has been partially implemented with some more stuff that needs to do. We have funds. Part of the problem that occurred in the last audit is that there was funds outside of the accounting software that are being tracked that caused kind of you have to manually include these in there. So that was time consuming. It also led to errors with Excel files. So I'm recommending that all funds of the city be included in the software of the city as well, and make sure that that's in place before the end of the year, that all the fund activities accounted for. And one of the main recommendations of Daniel Jones was to their criteria, the 2018-001. They recommended that management get additional training or hire an outside firm to prepare the financial statements. And I kind of have a twofold recommendation, and this is just my recommendation from the outside looking in. I think because we're so late in the year now, that trying any other course of action but hiring another CPA firm to help with the CAFR is probably the wrong approach due to how close we are to the end of the year. So it's my recommendation that we kind of follow their insight for the 2019 audit, and you either hire, you talk with Bots Deal to see whether or not they will expand the scope of their agreement, because they have probably the most knowledge of the city finances due to how deep they've been in it besides city staff. Another firm would have to come in and have to learn the whole wheel over, and see if you can't get them to prepare the CAFR for the city. At which point Daniel Jones would come in hopefully in May and perform an audit of the financial statements. From talking to the CPA firms, it sounded like there was a change in personnel, and the change in personnel caused there to be a learning curve on the current year audit, that if we were to prepare the CAFR, the prior personnel did a lot of the legwork on the financial statements. The new person did not, or maybe didn't possess, I don't know if they didn't have the skills or they chose not to perform these duties. So a lot of the stuff was ping pong, just going back and forth. That's not our job. That's not our job. Well, you did it last year. Well, you need to do it this year. And so these processes were taking weeks and months and caused just delays on top of delays. So getting one firm to prepare that, I think, would be in the best interest for the 2019 year. Moving forward, after talking to Karen, I believe there's somewhere in the budget, now I'm just kind of talking, in the budget there's a $50,000 budget for a position that's been unfulfilled, like a management type position. That is not going to get you a skilled accountant. I've tried hiring them for 50. They're idiots. So you guys need someone that has an understanding of the gap and all these things. Well, to probably perform the CAFR for this year, you're probably going to need to pay someone $20,000 to do all those responsibilities. So my suggestion would be to complete the audit and then find room in the budget for 2021 to try to add a $70,000 assistant finance director that has an accounting background that can help prepare the financial statements of the city, can provide assistance to Karen, can do these special projects, could possibly be doing what KEB is doing that you're paying for, to have them audit the bonds each month. If you bring someone in with skill, they could probably provide the same type of report because they would have the extra time. You're basically creating a position that would have additional time. You'd probably want to get this person hired at mid-year, and you're saying, well, the budget's only $50,000. Well, half a year, if you budget $50,000 for the whole year and you hire a $70,000 person, there's still enough room in the budget. Then if you look at the next year, you don't hire Bots Deal to prepare the CAFR in 2021. You're not spending that $20,000. You then can reallocate funds to... Now, finding this person and doing these things is a whole different ballgame, but $70,000 with the benefits that could be provided by the city, I think could lure away someone that's working 2,400 hours a year in public accounting to a cushier job where they're working 8 to 5 and have some board meetings that they have to go to. Like I said, the part of this is a time constraint issue. It's the end of November. To try to hire someone and get them to prepare the CAFR in this time frame is just, I don't see that being very possible. And so I guess I'd look to make sure this doesn't happen again in 2020 when we're doing that audit. I would try to hire a firm, whoever it is, to prepare the entire financial statements and then allow Daniel Jones just to come in and audit. Daniel Jones's fee for the audit, from looking at my stuff I had from a few years ago, was much lower than all the other firms. And I believe their thought process was, we're only going to be coming in and auditing the financial statements, not doing all the other things. So I think that they're probably more than capable. They are more than capable of just coming in and knocking out those financial statements. And you'd want to set up a time frame with whoever you hire. Bots Deal, Showalter, Hochschild, Schmerz, whoever you hire in the world, you'd want to say, this needs to be done by April 30th. I don't care how many man hours you need to throw at it. And I guess I'd also recommend that Daniel Jones make sure to throw additional staff, that probably one staff member on and off is probably not the best approach to auditing the city of Brentwood size, that you kind of maybe get an agreement from Al that they're going to send more than, I don't know how many, was it just her most of the time?
For Daniel Jones or?
Daniel Jones, yeah.
There was just, for the most part, her and maybe 2 other people occasionally, and only Al, the principal, once.
I guess I'd talk to Al and say, we're a big job. Will you please make sure that more than one person is here for a few days? Just because it is a drain on city resources to continually require stuff for the audit. It's a horrible approach. That's not the approach maybe I'm biased, but that's not the approach my firm takes. We get in, we collect all the data, we harass the staff to the point of red face for a few days, and then we leave. And then everything else is small emails and stuff like that. It's not major projects. And staff can prepare for, you get to come here for 1 week and bother us, and then you have to be done by that time frame. And that's not asking too much if you're preparing the financial statements for them. So I think also it's kind of putting the screws to Daniel Jones a little bit and saying, we're going to have the CAFR done for you, but we also want to make sure you have the staff in place, and you're going to set a schedule and keep that schedule. And I think with all that in mind, you'd be able to get the audit knocked out no problem, early.
I had one question, Keith. In our ordinance, and this was brought up earlier in the year, in our ordinances, it's under the city clerk administrator's duties, but it's the financial part. It says annual report, audited financial statement shall be presented to the Board of Aldermen on or before the 60th day after the close of the year. There's no way, and you know what,
That's
that can get done.
a different report.
Well, this is audited on there, though.
That's
It's
a
audited
different.
financial
It says
statements.
right there.
shall be presented to the Board of Aldermen on or before the 60th day.
So, that's impossible. If you remain on the modified if you remain on the accrual basis of accounting, you have a 60-day look-back period. So if you're doing accrual audit, you have to wait 60 days to look for
Before you
bills
can
that are
even do it,
potential for receivables.
It's 60 days to collect
Yeah.
and post ad valorem.
Yeah. So obviously the city hasn't been following that guideline if it was in place. It probably
It wasn't followed before I got here.
Yeah,
I
it's
doubt.
never been followed. I mean, they presented the audit in June the one time I was sitting there, and that was about normal. You expect the audit, To be honest, December year ends are tough on CPA firms because
Tax season.
and they're busy with that, so they're kind of like, hey, we have till June 30th. I'm going to kind of push you off. I'm going to do a few things here and there, but come, May, I'm really going to tackle it, and that's what you kind of want to hope from them. But I guess if that's truly what the code says, I'd probably look into changing the code to say
Cleaning up the
that
code.
6 months, that it must be presented 6 months because that's what the state needs. I mean, that's not what
Right, that's the state. They want it filed by then. A lot of the compliance for Emma and for the
Yeah.
COPs are 6 months.
Yeah, so I would probably just change it to say by 6 months, because that gives you, but then again, there's no obviously. What's the repercussions for not following it? We've never followed it.
Right, exactly.
Other than being right by the letter of the law.
Right.
So, I didn't know if anyone had any questions or,
I would just say this is one of the most specific recommendations we've heard since I've been on the board. It's very concise and I understand it, so thank you.
well, this is my, if there's one thing I can help out with as the city treasurer, which I feel bad for the fire department, I know nothing about investments. I'm going to be a novice and worthless to them, but I will be there helping out if I can. Help with the audit, I can check that box. I can help with that. So, like I said, it's trying to at least lay out a twofold plan, because if this was May, my plan would be get someone hired in here that has experience preparing CAFRs and can do this, and then you don't have to have 2 CPA firms or 3 The fact that the city has hired and is paying 3 CPA firms in 1 year, it's kind of crazy to me. I understand each one's doing their own duties, and you can't, everyone else has different responsibilities, and but to me, to have 3 CPA firms, there's not anything wrong. It just, and it always leaves the other CPA firms always wondering, like, someone going to, what are they saying about me? What's this other firm saying about me? Am I going to lose this job because KB's in here saying, you should consider us for the audit. We're really good at auditing, and makes people insecure. We like to feel secure with these contracts and stuff.
So just so I understand, you don't recommend necessarily changing gears for 2019.
A little bit,
but ways that you can pull some levers and get on some people to create a schedule where
and
things are more timely turned around.
Increase the requirements, or expand the scope of what Botts Deal was doing for you, or another firm. It doesn't have to be Botts Deal. I spoke with her. She's still interested in doing stuff for the city. Whether she'd be interested in the next level, they do a lot.
She is, and she will get us a quote. She's out of town, but she will get the city a quote on the cost to expand the scope.
And
they do a lot of CAFRs.
Okay.
So that's not something, I've seen their CAFRs. I know that they do a lot of them, and they know what they're doing.
And then down the road, and you're looking at, you're recommending that we have sort of an assistant financial director that might be able to help with this scope. But
yeah, and I believe with the combination of the new software that's not 20 years old, combine new software with someone that has GAAP knowledge and GASB knowledge, along with an extra 40 hours a week for the projects that accountants always get pulled in all the different directions, I think that combination should enable you to produce CAFR financial statements next year, to not then have to hire Botts Deal.
and that's something we chew on for the 2021 budget.
Yeah, but you'd have to kind of look and say, hey, then you leave, this admin would have to leave that $50,000 position kind of unfilled, because you'd want that person hired by mid-year to be able to spend the 6 months to get up to speed.
Of 2020.
Of 2020,
Right.
yeah.
But that's already a line item in the 2020 budget.
Yeah, you just want
it's been an unfilled position, right?
Right.
So,
So
Okay.
you just want, obviously I can't tell you what to do, but you wouldn't want to fill that one and then say, hey, we need to find an accountant, because then you're saying, well, we don't have the budget for it, and then you're kind of sitting in the same boat that you're in, hiring bots deal, which it clearly works, but,
And as far as the expanded scope for getting it done now, we've got money in the budget for that. I mean, that's not going to be complicating whatever we're doing here today. Okay. Can you comment briefly? People have said to me, and I don't know how to evaluate it, we're good, bad, and different, that perhaps it might be better or easier if we went to a cash basis form of accounting versus accrual.
Yeah.
And if just for
Yeah.
those at home and for, what, yes,
yeah.
no, why shouldn't we do that? Why should we do that?
Ask me accounting questions all day. Everyone will leave. You won't have a budget meeting later. So easier, yes. Moving to the cash basis would 100% be a much easier process overall. The books are cash, revenue, and expenses. It does not get any easier than that. But you do not give the readers of your audit the entire picture of the financial situation. We spoke a little bit, if I bought a dump truck for $300,000 on December 31st, I don't pay for it. I make my books look real good in 2020. In 2019, I pay for it in 2021. I can shift monies around. As I told you, had a school district that collected $1.5 million of revenues in June, but they're for the next school year. When you include those monies in, the school looks like it's financially sound. Everything looks great. But really what they've done is they're already spending next year's money in the current year, and you can manipulate the totals when you do cash basis. And I feel as a CPA and as a resident, the accrual basis of accounting gives a fuller picture of the financial status, and all the liabilities. Just because you have $1 million in the bank doesn't mean you have $1 million in the bank. What if you owe vendors $2 million and you're just sitting on cash? The readers and the bondholders would want to know those things. Now, I know in speaking to another CPA, they said the cash basis doesn't affect your bond rating. But if you were to go from full accrual to cash, I would have to guess that would impact the bond rating. Now, if you were always cash basis and you have a AA bond rating, well, who cares? You've always been cash. But Moody's might be wondering why the city's going, what has gone on at the city that they're taking their accounting from clean accounting backward. Now, something else that the city does is the CAFR, which includes all the statistical data and a bunch of information. I don't believe not doing the CAFR would impact that's just my personal opinion. You can still do a full accrual audit and not have a CAFR, and I don't believe that would impact your ratings. What it would do is it would cause more work for your bond counsel. So they're telling me, don't do that. That's underwriter. It's going to kill your bond rating. That's not true. The bond rating cares, do you have an audit? Or is it on time? So, that could help save dollars if the city decided to scale back. And maybe that's not a decision for right now, but to something to think about, to scale back from the full CAFR, which has all the statistical and overlapping data, and the last 20, 30 pages of the audit that is just statistical information that causes some of these delays to occur when you're trying to contact the Brentwood School District to ask them for what debt they have, and their accountant doesn't feel like talking with you, and you're trying to reach out to St. Louis County. These cause delays, and really all it's for is for a pretty little certificate that says that you guys have a certificate of excellence.
That's what I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
because if you just do the audited financial statement and not a CAFR,
You won't get the
you cannot submit for the GFO Award of Excellence, correct?
Correct, yes. But I'd have to question, are you going to get the GFOA Excellence Award when we turn our audit in October? If they still give it to you in October, then it's kind of a joke if you ask me. Just because you have the certain schedules in there, if you turn an audit in 4 months later, do you really have excellence in accounting? And I'm not saying that against you. I'm saying the overall audit process. So how important is a certificate that doesn't really reward excellence? To me is turning your audit in on time. I don't know if you're going, you probably applied for it, and I don't know if you got it yet, or so.
Plus it costs $460 to even apply.
I mean, unless you guys are planning on immediately going out and getting another $40 million somewhere, I don't know how important it is to, that's just my opinion. I mean, other people, that's where I would maybe use the multitude of resources that the city has, talk with Michelle, see, do you think the city needs a full CAFR? Daniel Jones has already said go to the cash basis, so they don't think you need a full CAFR. And because that could help scale back the cost of their services also, if you're not paying for those extra 30 pages in the audit that you don't need.
And then I guess as we go forward,
Yeah.
that's something we can evaluate too,
Yeah.
or that you look at.
Mhm.
Well, great. Do you guys
I
have
mean, I
any
don't-
other,
yeah, I
any
don't
other
know.
questions?
Thank you.
Do you need any, I'm hearing you're on it, I say go continue at it. I mean, you don't need a motion or anything like that, so this is informational.
The only thing would be to get a expanded scope, and I talked to Michelle yesterday, so she will, if the board is willing to entertain that without asking us to go back out, since we have limited time, right?
Yeah.
So it would be best, your recommendation is to what?
My
Ask-
recommendation is to see if you can get expanded scope on the current engagement with Bots Deal. You put this back out, you got to give it 30 days. You're not going to get it out till the beginning of December. Now we're talking January. Then it needs to go to Ways and Means and hopefully get into the January meeting, which then it means it's got to go to the board in February. Now we're talking March before they're engaged, and we've already now
Right,
caused ourselves a 2-month delay.
right.
Yeah.
I should have that next week, so.
So do you need, I mean, I'd entertain that
If,
motion.
if there's a
that's-
motion supporting that, then what I would do is just take it straight to the board instead of bringing it back to Ways and Means.
How would you like the motion framed?
What he said.
Exactly.
Is that emotionable?
It is.
No, I guess and not that I'm not to step on toes, but just that the committee recommends allowing Bots Deal to bid on an expanded scope, expand the scope of their services to include preparation of the
We
CAFR.
already have
For
a
the year,
5-year
of- for
agreement.
the year,
2020.
for the year of 2020.
2019,
Or for the
sorry,
2019 budget
audit,
to
yeah.
occur in 2020.
Yeah.
So I would like to limit it to that.
Yeah, 'cause you don't want-
Because of your next recommendation.
Yeah.
But we have a 5-year agreement with them, we're in the 4th, which is an optional thing.
Okay, that's fine, but I just want to limit
Right.
this expanded
Yeah.
scope.
Right.
For the 2019 fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. Yeah, so you motion, you second,
Oh,
then we just
That was
need,
a motion?
yeah, just
So-
whoever's, one of us motioned, one of us
Yeah,
seconded.
that's fine.
Okay.
The
Roll
women
call.
are blur on the-
All the women Sims.
yeah, yes, yeah, we all sound the same and look the same,
The
apparently.
mayor's not here, so.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Parker Tice.
Yes,
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
thank you.
If you need anything else, just let me know.
All right, back at the budget. So we left off on Tuesday night. Unless anyone feels strongly, I would think that probably we do police next,
Okay,
or do
sure.
you have? So we'll do
Do you know where it
the
is in
police. If you, Chief, you care to come on down? And just, just as a framework to start, if you could begin with, high level, maybe some big ticket items, if there's anything material that, was asked for, not included, that we can begin there, and then certainly we'll open up to questions that the committee has after that.
If it's okay, Major McIntyre is our administrative major,
Sure.
and Jim has done a great job helping
Absolutely.
prepare the budget, so we'll kind of do this together.
Yeah, if you want to tag team as you like.
But I can start off and kind of address your overall look at our budget. There were a couple big ticket items that were in the budget this year. One of them was the in-car camera program that had been put off a couple years. The in-car camera is something we asked for through the IT budget this year. Currently, it's slotted to be paid for out of Prop P money. So that's one of the biggest ticket items that we have. Another ticket item that we have in capital is vehicles. Our fleet in the police department suffers greatly from day-to-day wear and tear. Obviously, we feel it's extremely important to have vehicles that are safe for our officers for a lot of reasons. And then the last piece of that, of course, is that these officers are in these cars 8, 9, 10 hours a day. and really is their office. And currently, the fleet that we have has really suffered a lot of wear and tear over the last couple of years. So those vehicles, 2 in asset forfeiture, I'm sorry, 2 in Prop P and 2 out of the general budget are slotted as well. As far as something that might catch your attention on our budget, last year we funded several items out of asset forfeiture. Asset forfeiture funding has gone down significantly. Before I got here, shortly before I got here, the officer that was assigned to the DEA task force was brought back to the police department. That resulted in a stop or a loss of funding from DEA for asset forfeiture funding. So really that fund there's money still kind of trickling into it, but we purchased the vehicle this year out of that funding, and it's down to around 23 or 4,000, I believe, right now.
23 something.
Yeah, so you'll see several items that we used last year out of asset forfeiture that are now in the regular budget this year. I guess the last thing I'd like to touch on is there's been a discussion it's going back into the fall of 2018 that came out of the genesis of it was that it came out of the Public Safety Committee. Alderman Plufka had asked me in a meeting whether or not we had enough manpower in the police department. That generated a lot of discussion and interest about this topic. There were a couple things that were relative to it. One was retail. Several of the cities around us actually have officers assigned to the retail. Excuse me. We do not here in Brentwood. But really, the thing that, as the chief here and the command staff, the thing that we were most concerned with was nighttime crime in our city. And really, when you look at that, it's prevalent throughout the St. Louis area. So as this thing moved forward into 2019, we really focused on that area of crime in terms of how we would deploy 2 additional officers in 2020. In 2018, at the end of 18, this Public Safety Committee directed that we prepare a study of cities, comparative study of cities around us in terms of manpower. We did that study, provided it to the city administrator, and then on to the Public Safety Committee. If you look at that study, it was, at least in my opinion, it was clear that cities around us had considerably more manpower. And if you look at one that's real close to us, Richmond Heights, they have 41 police officers, where we have 28 positions. That's just an example, but it was a common theme out of the cities that are around us. So as we look to do the budgeting, we really we are well aware that additional people are expensive and they're ongoing costs. So when you look at the cost of 2 additional officers, it's around $180,000 depending on who we hire. And those folks hopefully don't go away, so they're year-to-year costs. And because of that, when we had our discussions with the city administrator and the finance director, we really were looking at 2 choices here in terms of keeping our levels consistent to where it was, or going up 2 officers with the intention of putting them into a night watch patrol plan that would affect that nighttime crime problem that we have, and we're certainly not the only city that has it. So at this point, the budget that you have has us at the strength of 28 officers and 1 administrative person. So that's what you're looking at in our budget. Any questions on any of that? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So my first question is about whether there are 2 additional officers or not. I understand that you're down, there's 2 open positions and somebody's about to leave to go to the FBI.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and I also understand there are issues with hiring at the fire department too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you anticipate how do you anticipate being able to fill these positions? How are you going to address that?
Well, based on the status of our society, law enforcement generally is very difficult to hire quality people at this point. So we have Major Hawkins and Jason Coates have done all kinds of different tactics to try but you have to keep in mind that all of the municipalities in St. Louis County, the city's down 136 people as we speak. So this is a pool of applicants now it's a very contested pool. Having said that, we currently have, Jason, we have 3 people, 4. So we currently have 4 people to put in. They have to go through testing. They have to be interviewed. The whole thing that we do. So it's a difficult process for us right now to hire. We are recruiting hard, we're trying, and obviously, we're trying to be inclusive. One of the officers that retired this year, Lieutenant Phelps, is an African-American officer, so we'd love to be able to plug back in a couple folks that would help us. But right now, we close on the 30th of November, that closes. So we're hoping to get we currently have 2 positions open, and we're hoping to fill those. Hopefully by the end of the year. Jason will probably be back there giggling about that, but we're going to try. The officer that's leaving is going to the FBI. Nick Nielsen has been hired by the FBI as a special agent, so he leaves January 4th. And we hate to lose Nick. He's a really good policeman, so we'll be open again in January.
Are there additional costs to hiring 2 employees other than salary, like a car or other equipment?
Yeah, obviously there's benefits, so you have that as well. Yes, there is. There's uniform costs, so it costs, Jim helped me out here, around $7,000 to outfit a policeman initially, with the vest, radios. Is that roughly?
Yes.
So roughly with a new miniature radio, bulletproof vest, gun, uniforms, it's around $7,500 per officer just to get them on the street. Right.
But are you anticipating needing an additional car or anything, or is this?
No, we would not need an additional car based on those 2 officers being hired. No.
I have more, but may I keep going?
Continue.
So, what's the miscellaneous contractual expense that's gone up $48,000?
So that's part of what I mentioned in the beginning of this in terms of what we paid for last year.
Okay.
So Jimmy, we're
that's
going to break that piece down.
What's in that large number? So it wasn't a big description.
The largest piece of that number, the miscellaneous contractual, just so we're on the same page, we're looking at the line item.
Is that 6210?
6210. The largest piece of that is East Central Communications. So their budget year is April. I believe it's April to May, and ours, unfortunately, is January to January. So we have to kind of make a real close, educated guess on what we think their budget's going to look like based on some estimates that they give us. So we generally try to make sure that we're not going to fall short. I think in 2017 we were a little short. We didn't realize that their budgeting plan had jumped that high. So that's the biggest portion of why that increase is in there.
And then
And also, Jim, their fiscal year is not ours.
Correct.
So June 30th, when they decided, which is the middle of our fiscal year, to jump, to increase.
And just so you know, that's a floating number, like Jim mentioned, and they charge us, currently they charge us by call for service. We're over 25,000 radio calls at this point in the city of Brentwood. That's high compared to other cities in ECDC. So each event we are charged. So this is a floating number for us. But one thing that we did do was we call on contract patrols a lot with this patrol plan we have. And we were concerned that the number of calls that we were being charged for did not include the contract patrols because they shouldn't be. That's self-initiated activity. Anyway, so we have audited with the ECDC on 2 occasions, and we went back through and made sure that we weren't being charged for those. So our radio calls continue to go up each year. So.
And Nancy, just for both of you, if you would just call out the page number you're on.
Oh, sorry.
So that, well, I can follow along, but those at home can follow along too.
Okay, so I'm still on page 153. And then your training budget's way up. I'm just curious it's up from a budgeted, it's up from a budgeted 5,800 to just shy of 25,000. So I'm reading across the line, right?
So last year we used asset forfeiture for nearly $20,000 for training. This year we've zeroed that line item out. So all of the training now is all lumped into one now. So that's why you see the big increase. There's no more asset.
So it's apples to apples in what you're spending. It's just not on the.
Correct. One was taken out of the asset forfeiture account. One was taken out of the smaller number was taken out of our regular account. That asset forfeiture account is no longer there.
And the supplies and materials, 6420, has a percentage jump. Is is that because new officers would need?
It's more the asset forfeiture. We used to use, we used a line item in asset forfeiture for supplies and materials. For example, our CALIA stuff, that sort of thing, all of that now is budgeted in one account instead of two.
So it's just rearranging.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just
Do you
one
have some
quick thing.
comment?
I think, Chief, you mentioned 2 cars were out of asset forfeiture and 2 out of, they're not. They're all out of regular capital because of the CALIA, the emergency manager position and the evidence technician and that we're taking out of Prop P. That's coming out of your regular budget, but earmarked for Prop P. Therefore, the 4 cars over on the capital side was changed to just pure capital. It has nothing to do with Prop P. So,
Thank you, Karen.
just want to make that clear. And then you said the budget they had how many officers in it? What they're looking at right now? It should be just your regular. It does not have the 2 additional in it.
Yeah, it should be 20.
20 plus
Right.
the one
Yes, ma'am.
administrative person.
Right.
Yep.
And then the 2 new is 160 total, not, correct? With benefits.
Well, it depends on where you bring them in at, what
Correct.
level.
So it could it be
City
anywhere?
Administrator Bola has allowed us with experienced officers to bring them in at a higher level, which
Right, but it's
we need to
still
be able to
probably
do higher.
only, if they didn't come in at this is the higher level. They could come in less, 160, so.
If we hired somebody coming out of the police academy, to Karen's
Right.
point, it would be lower because they'd come in at the first
At the
level, first
bottom,
step.
right.
One more question.
He-
This is a service question. Looking at the reports with the vapor trails of the cars, often there are cars which are just doing main streets. Would having the extra officers be able to give a little more service more often to those streets that are sort of neglected right now?
Especially at night, I mean, when you start looking at our crime patterns, a lot of, almost all of our car break-ins are happening at night. So the answer to your question, yes. We would be able to, and I'm cautious to tell you that 2 additional officers will solve all our problems, right? Cops are everywhere, it's common sense. But with 4 fishermen in a boat instead of 1, you have a better chance of catching fish. So we would be able to cover the streets more thoroughly and saturate areas that we've identified where there's problems. Yes.
I don't have any other further questions either. That was
Thank you.
Thank you.
nice and succinct. All right.
I'm sorry, can you take a 5-minute break?
Sure. So I guess we'll take a 5-minute break. Is there,
What's next?
so in terms of subject matter, I mean, are we going to have, if I'm thinking of
What
just
time do you
departments?
want this to run till, 1:30?
I probably have 1:30 is probably.
Okay, so we can handle one more department if you're ready for Eric.
Is there, so if we tackled them, and I'm socializing this, like, as far as judicial, legislative.
Judicial never presents.
Yeah.
Their budget
Do you
is
have, what, do
really
you have questions
negligible.
in legislative?
I don't think I have any questions.
That's-
Either of those
And-
departments, I'm the question person apparently.
And for administration, if you look at administration, there's really, so you have administration, which is.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, like, are you?
And then you have community services, so there's really no
Yeah, are
significant
you-
increase in there, so unless you have specific questions, I can answer that.
I mean, I don't, but
Okay.
certainly this is the time. I would socialize the idea of if the committee doesn't have any questions on those topics, we just go right along. But, if there are questions, we
Well, I
will.
guess we're still recording. I don't think
Yes,
it would.
we are.
Yeah, so even though Kathy's out of the room.
Could you pause the recording, because we're on break?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I could ask.
Well, I would be take it up.
I mean, I can ask a question, it doesn't matter.
When-
I don't feel like you need to ask a question for the sake of asking a question.
No, I have a legitimate
If
question.
you have a question.
I do
by
have
all
a
means.
question. On page 70.
So are we
So
still
what
running the
department
meeting?
are you in?
I'm on community services.
We're off the record.
Okay, so
So-
when we come back in, we'll.
So maybe
we'll
we can